biology. So welcome to our podcast. Yeah. So I want to introduce the pipeline or the process. First, I will share a script or share a PPT and introduce our team and myself. So the following part is your turn. You can share the screen and put your experience. And we have also collected, after that, we have also collected some questions from our audience. So let's begin the QA session. So this is today's 3 parts. Okay.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah. So let us wait a minute and we will start. Okay, let's start. Yeah. I will firstly speak a few sentences of Chinese. 大家好，由于咱们今天是外国小哥哥来给我们做讲座，所以说在后面的这种介绍过程中，我们都是用全英文进行交流哈。大家如果听的就是有一些困难的话，可以打开字幕，我看有些同学已经打开了，然后大家也可以就是说等会儿等我们介绍完自己，然后嘉宾分享，我们提完我们的 Q&A 之后，在评论区里聊天框打这些问题。对，好，谢谢。那我们就开始用英文了。Hello everyone, my name is Dong Hongyu from Westlake University and Zhongguancun Academy. I'm majoring in computational biology and computer science. So I'm the host of our today's lecture and panel discussion. Firstly, I will introduce our team. Let me share the screen, okay? So our team is called SDbioinfo. Let me introduce our team. We hope to help students majoring in computational biology and other fields awaken to and recognize the importance of data analysis in this fast-growing period, assist them in their academic studies and career development, and find a path that they truly love and where they can realize their personal value. So our team member is from various schools and academies, such as Peking University, Westlake University, and Harvard. So in the past few years, we have made quite a lot of progress and do some activities. Firstly, in the scientific research achievement, our team members published a paper in Science and as co-first authors and received expert comments and reviews. And the second part, in the science popularization work, our team members, that's me, that's my work, assisted the editorial department of BioArtMed. It's a very popular WeChat group in China, spreading the biological knowledge and explaining some journal articles. In reviewing the computational biology articles published in 2024, we have about 5,000 people have watched this article. And the third is our today's what we are doing now, the lecture podcast. We host and invite multiple people from multiple fields to talk with us, to give some lecture and answer the QA from the audience. And the third part, we have do some new media matrix 新媒体 and express the academic insights. So let me introduce today's lecturer. He's a very famous and we can see that he's a superstar, George. He's from the UCSB Berkeley, yeah, and have gained a lot of offers in this application period. He's majoring in some biological related work, such as investigating the pathogen host dynamics during some disease. And he will introduce his experience in how to get a PhD offer. So, hello, George. You can start your discussion and enjoy yourself. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. I'm going to share my screen for my presentation.
Yeah.
All right, can you guys see it?
Yeah, okay.
All right, fantastic. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me today, and I'm really excited to be able to talk about my experience applying for grad school admissions and some of the insights I might have for all of you in the audience today. So just as a background, once again, my name's George. I went to the University of California, Berkeley for my undergraduate degree, and I'm an incoming Harvard Biological and Biomedical Sciences PhD candidate. All right, so I'm just gonna quickly go through the types of things I'm gonna talk about today. So I'm gonna briefly mention my background and the things I was working on before I started the application process. But today, what I really wanna emphasize for all of you is the actual process of applying to PhD programs and everything I learned from that process. So just to start with my background briefly. So I grew up in a town 2 hours north of Los Angeles, California in the Mojave Desert. The area kind of looks like this in this image here. So I grew up in an immigrant family, and I'm the first in my family to go to college. So a lot of this process was new to me. And beyond that, I was really fascinated from biology from an early age, and I decided to attend the University of California, Berkeley for my undergraduate degree because of their strength in biological sciences. So starting at UC Berkeley, I enrolled in 2021 to study molecular and cell biology. I joined certain student organizations that specialize in biotech and research. Some you might be familiar with, such as iGEM, because I know they have iGEM clubs all around the world at different campuses. And beyond that, I took on leadership roles in some of these clubs, such as iGEM, and I taught 2 accredited courses on synthetic biology, in which I was the head instructor, and that was a really special experience. And beyond that, I completed an honors thesis on studying mycobacterial antibiotic resistance mechanisms in the lab of Jeffrey Cox, who I owe a lot to because he was the first person to bring me into an academic lab. And I really consider him a pioneer in tuberculosis research in the Bay Area. And so at the stage of graduating with my undergraduate degree, there's always this question that comes up of, when's the right time to apply to grad school? And this is the first choice many of you are going to have to make. And I would say there are 3 main options for applying to grad school. So number 1 is you can apply during your senior year while you're still in your undergraduate school. And I would say this is becoming more rare every year. And when I was at the interviews, I noticed that maybe this is the least prevalent, that I think just the incoming classes are becoming older. And this is usually just because of how competitive admissions have become. But I would say if you're thinking about applying during your senior year, here are some things you should consider. I would say most of the candidates at this stage are usually at the top of their class in terms of their GPA. They have a lot of existing research experience, and they have some leadership experience in like different student organizations. And then beyond that, from my observations, I would say a lot of these students have like 1 publication or preprint at the interview stage. And so that's option 1. Option 2 is you can wait until after you graduated and wait another 6 months before applying to grad school. And this is great if you want to stay in a lab you've been working at as an undergraduate, and you might have a project you want to finish up. You might have a preprint or a publication that you want to finish up. This is great for that. And it's also great if you just didn't want to worry about applying to PhD programs while still taking classes, because that can be difficult to balance. What I would say what is most common nowadays, and what I did, is applying after working as a research associate. So what I mean when I mention research associate is someone who works full-time in an academic lab for around 2 to 3 years after finishing their undergraduate degree. From my experience at a lot of the top programs, I would say between 50 to 70% of candidates have done this. And I would say, I'm going to get into this later on in my presentation, but I would say, universities in the United States often value this. They value additional practical research experience. So there are many cases to do that. I'm going to cover some of them today. But once again, all of these options are open to you, but I'll advocate for the decision I made. And so if you want to explore new areas of research, if you want to pivot into a new discipline of biology, a research associate is a great position to do that. Beyond that, if you just want to gain more research experience in general, which is what the case was for me, it's a great idea. But so also keep in mind that many of these candidates for top programs are going to come in with 1 to 3 publications or preprints. I would say for domestic students, like 1 publication or preprint is usually enough. But the reality with applying as an international student is it could be a bit more competitive. So I would say if you have 2 to 3 publications or preprints, you should be good to go. And so some additional benefits of becoming a research associate is that if you already know which institution you want to attend for graduate school, you can become a research associate at a lab that is already affiliated with that institution. And the benefit here is that by working there, you gain the ability to network with the faculty, with the PIs, and with all of the current students, throughout the 2 to 3 years you will be in that position. So by the time you apply, admissions committees will already recognize you and hopefully have a positive impression of your research abilities and your passion for the institution. And so just very briefly, what I ended up doing is I joined the lab of Matthew Waldor at the Harvard Medical School. I joined on a 2-year contract, which I think is usually the bare minimum for a research associate position. And I worked on 2 main projects, and I was really grateful to have a successful experience, as I had 3 co-authored papers and 2 submitted manuscripts by the time I applied for PhD programs. And in addition to that, I wanted to continue working on mentorship because that was something that was important to me. And so I volunteered for a scientific journal where I could read manuscripts for high school and middle school students doing science. And so this journal is called the Journal of Emerging Investigators. If you are interested, definitely look them up. They're always open to volunteers, and I think it's a great opportunity and something really special to speak about in your application. So now I'm going to emphasize really the core message of, I think, today's presentation, which is really discussing how to apply to PhD programs strategically. So before we get going, I just wanted to cover, generally what qualities are most valued in PhD applicants in the United States. And so what I would say is, once again, admissions committees are looking for evidence that you are likely going to be successful in graduate school. And these mainly come from practical research experience. They want to see that you are passionate about science, that you can conduct research independently, and that you can successfully work with other people. And these are usually better predictors than some of the standard predictors, such as high GPA and doing well on exams. And this is not to say GPA isn't important, but that GPA is used as a filter for which applications are read. And so just some more context on this, I would say for domestic students, most top programs mention that as long as you have over a 3.5 GPA on a 4.0 scale, generally they will read your application. There are some exceptions. For example, I've heard that MIT's bioengineering program will only read your application if you have a 3.9 GPA or above. But most programs are not very strict about GPA. what they really care about and what the core of your application is going to be about is convincing them that you have great research experience. And so, in addition to that, what are some considerations for choosing a PhD program? So I would say you want to consider the location. Do you want to be close to where the biotech industry is? Do you want to be in a more secluded area? Cohort size is important. Some programs take 4 people a year. Some programs take 40 people a year. You're going to have a different social experience depending on what you're looking for. So also it's important to really consider which faculty excite you at these institutions. Who do you want to work with? Why do you want to work with them? That's really, really important. Beyond that, especially nowadays, it's important to consider what is the funding situation for different institutions. Different institutions have different reliance on different sources of funding, whether it be a private funding or whether it be funding from the government. And depending on these factors, different schools have different capacities for how many students they can bring in. And that's important to consider. Beyond that, I would say most programs are divided into 2 camps. So either they focus on basic biology or they're going to focus on translational biology research. And so it's important that you understand what is more important to you and what your preference is for programs. Beyond that, you want to consider student financial support. I would say this isn't as important nowadays because most salaries and stipends are going to be relatively uniform across top programs, but there are exceptions. And I would say, most programs I experienced will pay their students between $50,000 to $60,000 a year. And that is probably, I would say, competitive for graduate school, but there are programs that will only pay you between $30,000 to $40,000. And it might be difficult to live with a stipend of that size. So definitely consider that as well. And lastly, I would say the hardest thing to interpret, but also one of the most important, is the culture of the program. And if you can find insiders at different schools, it's a great opportunity to network with them and maybe ask them questions about their opinions on the culture of the school, as that could impact your choice of where you want to apply. And so next, I'm going to briefly talk about general application requirements. There are really just 4 application requirements when you're applying to graduate school programs in the US. So one is you have to have a resume, which I think many of you probably already have, and you would just have to adapt that for your grad school applications, but you don't have to make any major stylistic changes compared to applying to an internship, for example. But the main 2 essays are going to be your statement of purpose and your personal statement. I will talk about these in the next 2 slides. And then lastly, there are supplemental essays. Not every program requires these, but some schools will ask you an additional question or 2, and these could be more personal and behavioral questions, or they could be more scientific questions. So let's talk about the statement of purpose. This is the most important essay you will write for your application. This is usually between 2 to 3 pages. And really what this essay is for is to help you showcase your logic and how you approach doing science. This is not a resume. So don't simply list your accomplishments. And I think that's a common mistake that people make. So generally the way this looks is that you might want to introduce why you got into research and the types of questions that motivate you. And then for the rest of your essay, you will talk about your most meaningful research experience. And you really want to detail the whole scientific process of, what was your question? What was your hypothesis? How did you try to answer that hypothesis? What did you interpret from the data you got? If you ran into challenges, it's really important to talk about those technical challenges and how you overcame them. And then at the end, you really want to tie it into the program you applied to. So you want to explain how this experience shaped your desire to join the specific program you're applying to. And it's really important to mention, I would say, 3 faculty that you'd be interested in working with, and you want to explain why that is. And then so next you have the personal statement. This is also important, but is a more open-ended essay. And what this is for is to help you showcase yourself as a person more broadly. And so here you can really talk about numerous things, including significant personal challenges you might have faced, maybe why you're personally motivated to join science, You can discuss a time in your life when you took on leadership and mentorship roles. And at the end, once again, I would tie this into the university you are applying to. For example, if mentorship is something that is very important to you, maybe mention different mentorship opportunities that university offers so that you can give back to the community, and in a way that you can essentially teach the knowledge you have gained as a graduate student to others in your community. So some basic application timeline tips. I would say everyone works in a different timeline, and it's up to you what works best for you. But here's some general considerations. Firstly, I would spend the summer trying to figure out which programs you want to apply to and the faculty at these programs you want to work with the most. Also, for your recommendation letters, I would write to the professors who are going to provide those as early as August, because it could take them a while to respond, and I know that from experience. And beyond that, when you're starting to work on your essays, always start with your statement of purpose. Once again, this is your most important essay, so start with this one. And then beyond that, I would check the application websites when they first open, usually in August or September, so that you know if you have to write any supplemental essays. So here are the programs I applied to. I'm not going to go into much detail of why I chose these right now because I don't have time to do so. But some major considerations is I would say a safe amount of programs to apply to are between 10 to 15 programs. I would say that is the sweet spot. And beyond that, some schools allow you to apply to multiple programs in the same cycle. So some examples for that are MIT, where you can apply to, I would say, 2 programs at the same time or more maybe. And the University of Washington also allows you to apply to 2 programs. But other schools like Harvard do not allow you to do this. And so I was really fortunate and honestly very surprised that I got interviews at many of these programs. And what I want to spend the rest of this presentation talking about is my experience at some of these interviews that I think could be really useful for some of you. So before getting into that, I want to talk about general interview advice. I would say the most successful interviews you will have are the ones where it feels like a natural conversation. You want the professor to feel like you are already their colleague instead of a student. And I would say, if you just have a great conversation, that's a good indicator for whether or not you might get in. And beyond that, I would say, while most conversations with faculty at interviews are very relaxed, on occasion, you will meet professors that are going to challenge you, that are going to ask very difficult questions. And in fact, they might ask you questions that they do not expect that you will be able to answer. And in these situations, it's really important that you are calm and show confidence in your answers. Beyond that, something I find very empowering, and it is related to the rest of this, which is that you are in ultimate control of the interview. The professor is there to learn about you. And so you get the choice of what you want to talk about and how you want to talk about it. If there's a project or an experiment that you're not comfortable talking about, don't bring it up. And if they do bring it up, then you can kind of steer the conversation, and that is totally acceptable. And beyond that, something that not all students are aware of during the interview stage is that many of the current PhD students that you will meet at the dinners, at bars, at different social activities are also taking notes on you, and they will give feedback to admissions committees. This is not true for all schools, but there are certain programs where the current students are having a major say in whether or not you get in. So be, just charismatic and have a great time talking to the current students, and that will reflect positively on you in the admissions process. So some common interview questions I got, I would say the number one question I almost always got was, tell me about yourself. And this is a very lazy question for a professor to ask, and that's probably why I was asked it the most. And so it's very open-ended, and it's important that you know how to answer this question. Beyond that, you will be asked about the projects you've worked on and what excites you about science, and why you want to do a PhD and what draws you to the program that you applied to specifically. And beyond that, you might be asked to talk about obstacles you faced doing research. And I would say one of the most creative questions that I was asked, I would say 2 to 3 times across this process, was, if you have an unlimited budget, what kind of project would you pursue and why? And I think that's a really, potentially challenging question. So I would think about your answer to that. And so now I'm going to talk about some of the programs that I interviewed at and what my experiences were. So firstly, I'll talk about Caltech biology. So Caltech is special in that they do a 2-stage interview process. Other schools usually do a 1 single interview. And so for Caltech, you apply right early December. December 1st is when the due date is, but by the middle of December, within 2 weeks of applying, they will notify you if you got the first round interview. And this is a 15-minute online Zoom interview with 2 faculty members. And so this first round interview is usually given to the top 10% of applicants. And it will happen very soon after they give you the notification that you got the interview. So they will ask you very general questions about your research background, nothing that difficult. But the hard part here is to be concise in your answers because time is short and they will cut you off at the 15-minute mark. And so I got the first round, but I didn't get the second round interview at Caltech. Talking to some of the faculty, I think it was just that my research interests were a bit more translational than what Caltech offered. And so I just wasn't maybe a great research fit, but it's a great program and I highly recommend you apply if you're really interested in basic biology. So my next interview was at UCSF Tetrad. And so this was held in person in late January. They interviewed 40 to 50 candidates to fill a class size of around 20 to 25 people. I would say every year their class size is around this, but sometimes they have MD, PhDs, and deferred students that fill up slots. So for my year, they only took 12 students to fill this class size. And so in one day, you will interview with 5 faculty members and 1 current student. And these interviews will be 30 minutes each. And what is UCSF looking for? I would say the most important thing to keep in mind if you are interviewing in the Tetrad program is they want people who are excited about interdisciplinary research. So regardless of your background, they want you to have a willingness to work with people in different disciplines of biology to answer the questions you're interested in. And I think it's important to emphasize in the interview that you're open to collaborations during your PhD. And beyond that, this is sort of related, is I would say compared to other schools, UCSF is more reluctant to take 2 candidates that have a similar background. 2 candidates could be absolutely excellent and great fits for the program, but if they have similar research experiences, they will only usually take 1 of them. And this is once again because to foster their collaborative environment, they want everyone to bring something unique to the program. And so that's something to keep in mind, that you want to emphasize what makes you special. So my next interview was Harvard BBS, and this was held in early February. They interviewed between 70 to 80 candidates, and they gave 40 to 45 offers. I think this will be consistent with next year as well, but in 2 years, it might be a bit more. So we will see. And so here I interviewed with 4 faculty members in one day. And these were some of my longest interviews because these were 45 minutes each instead of 30 minutes, which is the usual standard for many programs. And so what is Harvard looking for? I would say Harvard BBS is a very large program where you have access to over 500 faculty. And they want people who can demonstrate their own independence and their clarity in what they want to achieve in grad school. This is because they want to make sure that you're going to be okay if they let you free to navigate this large environment, because there isn't much hand holding. So you really have to know what you want. And beyond that, there are a lot of social events at Harvard, different dinners, different bar events. And so you want to really show that you're engaged with the community by talking to a lot of faculty and a lot of current students. It doesn't have to necessarily be about science, but just have nice conversations with them, and that will reflect well in your admissions probability. And beyond that, once again, since it's a 45-minute interview, I would say compared to other interviews, Harvard faculty are going to ask you more technical details about your projects than other schools. So just keep that in mind. So next, I went to the University of Washington for their molecular and cell biology program. This is held in mid-February across 2 interview weekends. I do not recall how many people were interviewed, but all I know is the final cohort size is between 15 to 25 students. So here I talked to 4 faculty online, and it was 30 minutes each. But after this online interview, they flew us out for the in-person visit. And the in-person visit is just to assess you socially. So it's just for social activities. It's a fun experience, but they will be looking at how well you fit into the campus culture. So what is University of Washington looking for? I would say 2 things. Once again, sort of similar to UCSF, they care if you're interested in interdisciplinary science. Once again, I think if you can show that you're broadly interested in working across different disciplines of biology, that's a great thing. I would also say that since this program specifically is coordinated by the University of Washington and the Fred Hutch Institute, definitely show that you are excited by the research at the Fred Hutch. And so I would say, especially if you're coming from a background in cancer biology or immunology, I would emphasize that because the Fred Hutch really specializes in, I think, these fields. And so beyond that, once again, they want candidates that just fit into the culture of the University of Washington and Seattle generally. I would say a tip for this is that if you enjoy spending time outdoors, if you like going on hikes or camping, that is always a great conversation starter because a lot of people in the Seattle area are really into the outdoors, and like a lot of faculty love going camping. So it's a great conversation to have with them. So then I went to MIT Biology, and these were 2 weekends of interviews with roughly 50 candidates per weekend. So what I've heard, but I cannot verify, is that they take about 70% of interview candidates. So at this stage, generally, everyone's great. Everyone's very smart at these interviews. They just want to assess who really fits into the culture of MIT. And so something special about MIT is that the first 2 days of your visit are for the social activities, are for the dinners, are for the bars, and the last day is the hard day. That is when you're actually talking to faculty. So make sure to get enough rest during the weekend and don't overdo the partying because you will have a hard day on the Monday when you're interviewing. And so for MIT, you talk to 4 faculty members and 1 current student, and these are all 30 minutes each, once again. And so what is MIT looking for? I would say what they really want is passion for science broadly. MIT does not care what your background is. Their philosophy is that if you are a passionate scientist, you can do anything you want in science. You could have studied microbiology as an undergraduate and then do cancer immunology as a graduate student. And so they want people that can show curiosity and knowledge of biology across disciplines and openness to really explore a lot of biology. And beyond that, I would say they want candidates that fit into the social and intellectual culture at MIT. I would say compared to other schools, the MIT cohorts are closer together than other programs. A lot of these students, they hang out every week, and that's not necessarily true of other programs. So they really want to bring in people that the current students like. And so it's really important that you give a good impression during the social activities, I would say for MIT specifically. And so then I went to the University of California, San Diego for their biomedical sciences program. This is held at the end of February. So I interviewed 50 candidates and gave around 20 offers. I interviewed with 3 faculty members here. One of the faculty interviews was a lunch interview that is an hour long. It sounds intimidating, but it's actually very relaxed because you're just eating and having a good time. And the other 2 interviews were 30 minutes long. And so what is UCSD looking for? I would say they want people that know what they want to do in graduate school. Once again, UCSD is a relatively large program and they have lots of faculty options. So they are really impressed if you already know who you want to work with and why, because then they have confidence that you will be able to be independent. And beyond that, since the history of this program is that they're really involved in disease-related research, it's important that you indicate an interest in translational biology. And so my last interview was at Stanford for their microbiology and immunology program. So this was the last interview held in the season, and Stanford likes to do this, where they hold their interviews in the first week of March. And Stanford, I think, is very unique, and I'm going to talk about this. So first of all, you talk to more faculty at Stanford compared to other programs. I interviewed with 6 faculty members and 1 current student, and this was spread between 2 days. But I know people for different programs who had to interview with like 8 or 9 faculty members. So it will be a lot of interviews. And beyond that, I would say Stanford is also maybe the most selective in that there were 12 candidates invited out and they only accepted 4. And so what is Stanford looking for? All the 12 candidates that were interviewed for this program are incredibly smart and incredibly talented. So what's the differentiator? And I would say the main one is that you have to show a deep passion for Stanford specifically. They want people that want to go to Stanford above other schools. So if Stanford is your number one choice, communicate that. If it isn't, then maybe don't and try to be honest. But I would say if Stanford is your number one choice, then they want to hear that. And beyond that, something I would say that is also very important is that you talk to a lot of faculty in the program. There's more socializing at the Stanford interview compared to any other interview I went to. And so it's very important that you reach out to all the faculty and try to have nice conversations about science because they want to see that you can essentially work at any lab in the program instead of being someone who is only a good fit for 1 or 2 labs. And so when it came to making decisions, my offers were UCSF, Harvard, University of Washington, MIT, and Stanford. So I didn't go to all of the interviews I got. And this is a choice that I'll leave up to all of you to make. But if you already get into your top choice school, it's usually good etiquette to not go to an interview for a program that you don't want to go to at that stage, just to save them time and to make sure they can focus on candidates who are more passionate about that school. And I would say that always is a good look, and no one is going to be upset if you reject an interview. And so for my decision making, I really knew I wanted to stay in Boston because I had a lot of close friends and a strong professional network here. And I knew I had a support system. And graduate school is very difficult. So I wanted to be around people I could trust and count on when times get hard. And so I was really deciding between MIT and Harvard. And I would say MIT, in my opinion, gives more support for students, but you have less faculty options, especially for microbiology, which is my background. And Harvard BBS, while I would say they require more independence from their students, they also have a lot more options. And personally, I valued options. And so that is why I chose to go to Harvard BBS, and I will be starting in the fall. But it was a very difficult choice to make, and you have until April 15th every year to make that decision. And so just some final advice is that the journey to graduate school is never done alone. Don't be ashamed to ask others for support and advice. I asked a lot of people for help. The people I asked for help also asked a lot of people for help when they applied. So that's just the way this works. You always give back to the next generation who are applying. And so just, it's okay to ask for help. And beyond that, I would say definitely make sure that you're on top of your mental and physical health because this is a long and stressful process. And beyond that, just understand that a PhD is a major commitment. It's okay to do a PhD and it's also okay to not do a PhD. But if you're going to apply, really be able to convince yourself that it is the right decision and know what your scientific interests are. And so that is all I have for today. I'm really thankful for this opportunity to talk about, my experiences, and I'm really excited to answer some of your questions. And also feel free to contact me here. This is going to be my email address for the next, few years as a graduate student. And you guys should always feel free to contact me if you have any questions about advice or about anything. So thank you.
Thank you very much, George. You give us a very, very rich and very good pipeline from your background to your experience and your final choice and advice. Yeah. Although I'm a PhD student, I got a lot. And I have something, I have find that both of us have some common point. I have also do the iGym. I'm a team
Oh,
member of Wuhan University. When I'm in 2022, yeah.
mhm,
I'm really do some mathematical models
mhm,
and
mhm,
AI algorithms help other classmates to model, such as the bacteria, how did they grow, and yeah, we have got a gold medal,
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
finally, yeah. So,
Congratulations.
yeah, listening to your lecture is really I enjoyed a lot. So, let's begin the second part. Yeah, sorry. Let's begin the second part. The QA session. Firstly, we will ask some questions that I'm interested in, and we have also collected some
Mhm.
questions from our audience previously. They have filled in the form. Yeah, so the first question, we have provided the Chinese version and
Mhm.
the English version for both you and the audience. So let's begin the first question, and we can talk about how much does paper uh, influence your academic or
Mhm.
your application offer? So this is the core question.
Yeah. So I would say my answer to this and my honest answer is that publications matter more the more time you have spent outside of your undergraduate, education. So if you're applying immediately after finishing your undergraduate degree, whether or not you have a paper doesn't matter as much. I would say, for top programs, generally, if you have one, manuscript or one preprint, that's great. But the more time you spend out of your undergraduate program, the more it matters what your publication record might be. And I think this is because they will de-emphasize your academic performance during your undergraduate time more as you've spent more time outside of it. So, like for example, if let's say you had a sort of average GPA, and you've spent now 3 years outside of college to just work full time as a researcher, they're not really going to assess you once again on your academic performance. But what they look for is that have you shown that you're a productive scientist? And I would say the truth is publications do matter. You don't have to have 5 papers like I did, and I was in a very unique position. But I would say if you can demonstrate that you have completed one project and that you got it to a stage where you have a manuscript that you're writing or that you have a preprint, these are all totally acceptable and they will be impressed by this. They just want to see that you're able to take a project from the start to the finish. And I think that's what it's great for. But if you're in your earlier stages, if you're an undergraduate, formal publications are, I would say, once again, de-emphasized. It's great that if you have them, it will definitely help you. But they will look at your publications. The admissions committee will likely read them to some extent. But in your essays, you still, once again, don't just list what publications you have, but rather explain the project, add context to, why did you pursue this project? How did you reach this outcome? And I think that's more powerful than just listing how many publications you have.
Yeah, thank you very much. From my opinion, paper means and matters a lot, but not all of things can be
Mhm.
reflected by paper. Yeah, it's a static, not a dynamic person. So that's why we need interviews.
Mhm.
That's why we cannot just uh, give some offers just only based on your CV. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you can be very, very familiar with your projects, yeah, in
Yeah.
your such as at the graduate period, even though you didn't have a paper, but you can give your own ideas and thoughts. I think
Mhm.
this is a very good point as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. Take ownership.
this
I would say number one, take ownership over your project. Yeah.
yeah. So the second, well, I'm very, uh, maybe your parents will be has been very proud of you.
Yeah.
Yes, as a first generation college graduate from an immigrant family. Yeah, I believe that uh you face a lot of challenges and difficulties. Uh, I want to ask that how did you overcome them? Do you seek help from others, or do you do things and work hard? I think both of them. You need
Mhm.
you do that. Uh, you have gained some offers and have
Mhm.
success. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let us talk more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say to answer this question, the key is that you need to be a self advocate and you have to seek mentorship from others. So, really, I would say the hardest part for me in this whole process was that I just didn't know what it would look like. And that's true for other people, not just those that are, come from immigrant backgrounds, but people who are the first in their families to apply to graduate school, for example. It's just a really unknown process when you first start. You can read about it, you can do research, you can look at websites, and that only gives you half of the story. Half of it comes from experience. And so to seek that kind of wisdom that people might have from the experience of applying and experience of being in graduate school, I think it's really important from the moment you're an undergraduate to really seek out older mentors. Like, for example, if you work in an academic lab, if there's a graduate student I really like to talk to or a postdoc, they could be a great resource to learn more about the application process. And some of your older classmates who are undergraduates who are applying maybe the year before you might apply, they're also great resources. And this goes back to, I would say, one of my core pieces of advice, which is, don't be ashamed to ask for mentorship and support. I think it's really important. And what I really owe my success to is the incredible mentors I've had. On my own, I couldn't have accomplished this. I only accomplished this because I was surrounded by extremely smart people and really helpful people. And I would say it's just really important to find the right mentors, and they will tell you everything you need to know. But just find them and take action and looking for mentorship.
Yeah. I, I want to add a new point that AI is also a quite
Yeah,
useful
yeah,
tool,
true.
especially in this period. Yeah. Actually, all of my classmates has used OpenCloud, Cloud Code, and
Yeah,
so many others AI generated tools. Yeah, so I think it's very, very helpful to use AI. Sometimes it's even better than ourselves.
true. That's
For
true.
example, you can search some uh, resources from
Mhm.
our website, even let it recommend some programs you can apply for. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
train
I
your
absolutely
open
agree.
cloud better. It's
I use AI actually quite a lot as well, and I would say
yeah,
AI is definitely, in my experience, was most useful for finding programs and faculty that were really
yeah,
exciting to me. I would say once again, once you get to like the interview stage, that is where AI might be less useful because you want to rely on like personal stories of people that have done the interviews because they can tell you, oh, this professor is going to interview in this type of style. This person's going to be nice to you. This person's going to ask tough questions. These are things that AI is less useful for. But I would say in the early stages, and even I would say many programs are now more relaxed about having you use AI in your essays, as long as it's not writing the essay. If you're using it for revisions, like if you essentially already write down like what you want to talk about, but you want your sentence to be written in a more compelling way, or just change some of the grammar. I think AI is totally acceptable for those, and programs usually will say explicitly that they allow that.
yeah. In our school, we have even do some AI assisted interviews. Yeah, that's really
Oh,
what I lead. I lead a project that we extract our teachers, for example, their fields, research fields, their personalities, their public papers into skills that we can give every people a skill that extracts their information, and then we can create a digital person to interview you. Yeah,
Wow.
I really do that. It's very, very interesting. And we
Yeah.
have also applied it in our academic official interview. We have a lot of experiments and really real users. I
Mhm.
think it's really can be commercialized or even help our applications. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So let's quickly move on the last part on the next part. Well, the question three is about the gap year or the research associate. I think you have told quite a lot in your PPT, so I will skip this question. And the fourth question about your academic research experience and your iGEM competition. I think that research experience matters a lot, yeah, but uh, does this iGEM competition really influence your application process? Yeah, the competition is it a good uh, bonus point in your application process?
Yeah. So I can talk about actually both of these questions here. So
Yeah.
I'll talk about iGEM first. So I'll tell you first of all that the iGEM organization at Berkeley is very different from most iGEM organizations in that we don't attend a competition. We were really only
Oh,
iGEM in name. And so what we did actually was we were kind of like a mini research institute where we had 6 essentially faculty members who were like older students that led essentially their own research groups of between 5 to 10 other undergraduates. And we sought funding by getting grants, by getting different awards from the school. And we had a wet lab space where we pursued projects. And what we did is that we entered like different competitions. Like, for example, Berkeley has this big ideas competition where if you want to create a biotech startup, you can propose essentially like the research you've been working on and whether it's feasible for something as for a startup, and you can get money for that. And these were the kind of things we pursued instead. But I would say that nonetheless, what is true is iGEM or not, if you are engaged in like student organizations as an undergraduate that focus on essentially, making you a more experienced scientist and teach you more about research and all of these, they all look great on your application. I might struggle to comment specifically on what the admissions committee will think about iGEM, like if you've attended the competition and if you've like won awards at the competition. But once again, iGEM is a very widely recognized program. Like as we just discussed, we both share this, and a lot of applicants, I think, have been part of iGEM at these interviews, and so I think it's a great thing, and it's a great commitment to make. And whether or not you get awards at competitions, I would say it's an experience to highlight because it shows that you're really, I would say, passionate about science, and that you wanted to essentially outside of your classes that you wanted to pursue research to a certain capacity. And so I think it's a great thing. And also on the second note, just looking at the question about phase 1 clinical research,
yeah,
I would
yeah.
say, I guess, yeah, maybe we're going to introduce this question, but I'll just answer it because I've read it. So I would say if you are applying to programs that emphasize translational research, these could be like UCSF's BMS program or like UC San Diego's BMS program. It's a great thing to say that like I've worked on clinical related research and this has inspired me to do more research in the future at the bench, which leads to tangible benefits for for patients and for people that have disease. And I think it's always great to connect a clinical experience with your motivation for why you want to pursue a certain type of research. But if you're applying to a more basic science program, I usually have de-emphasized the phase 1 clinical trial experience and talked more about my basic like science experiences, because that's something that is more important to those types of programs. So it really just depends on which programs you apply to. But once again, if it's a more translational focused program, I would say having clinical type experiences can be unique and indicate that you really are passionate about translational research.
Yeah, okay. So that's just similar to what you will tell us, or if you give a lecture, you should based on your audience background. Yes, to slightly change the content you will deliver. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's do some that's the last question. Yeah. So let us give a little more insight about the future, especially in this AI assisted background. Yeah. So do you have any visions for the preferences of those pair first programs, such as Harvard, MIT, and Stanford? What kind of students they like more in the future? Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, once again, Harvard, I think, emphasizes the types of students that can show a high degree of independence. And once again, this will vary by program, because even at an institution, different programs have different cultures. And so the program I'm going to attend, which is BBS, once again, is a very large program comparatively to other programs. And they want students that are going to come in and already know what they want to work on and can essentially navigate graduate school relatively independently. Because once again, they're not going to give as much support as other programs. They kind of let you free. And I would say if you really show that you have strong initiative and you are really passionate about very specific things in biology and you know the people you want to work with, I think Harvard appreciates that and you will thrive at Harvard. I would say MIT is for really the intellectual, someone who very broadly just loves science, can talk about anything from neuroscience to cancer immunology, and someone who is really adaptable to study different things. Because I think MIT wants students who are, once again, really broadly passionate about biology. And this is reflected in their structure for their biology program, because you actually don't get to rotate in labs until your second semester. Your first semester is just to take classes and to get to know the faculty, because their idea is that, once again, they don't care what your background is. You could have studied microbiology all of your undergraduate time, and they want you to come in and they want you to talk to people that study neuroscience. They want you to talk to people that study hardcore computational biology. And they want to encourage you to explore these fields and to develop a passion for these fields. So I think MIT is for someone who is really adaptable to study different fields, and someone who I think is more interested in pivoting in their graduate school experience. And Stanford, I would say Stanford is also to some degree similar to Harvard, where you have to come in and kind of know what you want. But I would say Stanford also really has this culture of people who are really interested in integrating AI and biology, especially now with a lot of the advancements coming out of the ARC Institute. And I would say just the culture of being around Silicon Valley, they like people that are knowledgeable and interested in pursuing, I think, dual tracks of doing wet lab and computational biology, and people who are more aware of like the startup space and how essentially Silicon Valley is integrating into biology. And but I would say that as when it comes to essentially like what is the core of what makes you successful at any of these schools, it's fundamentally the same. Once again, it's just you have to show passion for biology, and you have to be able to do research with some degree of independence, which of course is before you go into grad school, you're not going to be as independent as you will be in grad school. But I think if you can show that you can be productive and successful as a scientist, and that you really love to do science, you can be successful at any of these schools. But there are these really minor differences, maybe 1% to 2% differences that matter. And so I think I've covered them, but yeah, we can talk about this more as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for this, all of these 5 or 4 questions. So, now you can, our audience can type in the chat box if you want to discuss questions, your interest about the application process or the academic background about George, with George. Yeah, you can also unmute your microphone and just talk to each other. Yeah, yeah. This can you see that George cares one question? You can type, click the chat box and answer it, or I will also read that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask if the professors and the universities of the US like to accept international exchange PhD students studying for half to 1 year. Yeah.
Yeah. So the truth and honestly answering this question is that, once again, since I come from a more perspective of a domestic applicant and a domestic student, I think it's harder for me to answer this, well, because I'm not exactly sure essentially what the attitudes are at different universities for accepting international like exchange students. But I would highly encourage you, if there's certain labs and certain professors that you would love to spend some time working with for 6 to 12 months, I would still reach out, and I would still be enthusiastic. And whether or not that opportunity is available, that's up to them. But I would just highly encourage you to, if there's something that you're really passionate about, or something you really want to learn from, or someone you really want to learn from in the US, I would do it. I would reach out. But maybe you guys, other people might have a better idea of essentially the attitudes for exchange students.
Do we have any questions? Let me just wait a minute. Okay, so if there's no question, that's again express our gratitude to George. Yes, so thank you very much to give us a fantastic lecture and sharing your experience. Yeah, thank you
Thank
very,
you for
very much.
inviting me. Thank you
Yeah.
for inviting me. Really grateful to be here.
Yeah, if you are convenient, you can just come to China, yeah, to visit Beijing, visit Hangzhou. I think
Absolutely.
Westlake University, maybe you have heard about it, yeah. It's just like Caltech,
Yeah.
yeah,
Also, I put my email in the chat.
yeah,
So once again,
yeah,
I would definitely encourage you guys to reach out if you have any questions. But I would love to come to China one day. I think that would be great, and then to see the amazing science that's happening there as well. And one day it will happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We hope in the future we will meet again in
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
So this is the end of our lecture today. So thank you very much and bye bye.
Bye. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.